Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm joined by Tony Haggerty and Amy Canavan to talk about all things Celtic. How are you feeling this morning, Amy? All good? I know your team's won the league. Yeah? Nice celebration after that.
No, you're daft. You're being daft. Not at all.
Paddy Lavery afternoon Monday crew. Yeah, we're getting some of the names coming in already. If you are watching on any of the socials, including YouTube, then get involved in the discussion. There is plenty to talk about. Celtic are going for 30 games domestically, unbeaten. Tony Haggerty, we're going to be talking about that. Tony's already given us what he believes will be the lineup. Amy will be talking to you about what you think will happen tonight. It's always difficult to know. I think I'm probably averaging 6 or 7 players right every single week, because Ange is, he's one of these managers who is unpredictable at times when it comes to throwing in a wee curveball, and I think that's a good thing, because the discussion we had last week, Amy, was, is it even necessary to have a fixed strongest 11? Ange doesn't seem to work like that, does he?
No, I don't think he does. And I don't know. It's a good question. Is it a necessity? Because I see time and time again, week after week, it's all about consistency. But then again, when you've got the squad that Celtic have, and the way that Ange Postecoglou plays, it's so important that it is a squad and not just a team effort. So I can understand why you maybe say that it's perhaps not a necessity. And again, that just shows, strength and depth and numbers. But I don't think he does have a set 11, hence why nobody is able to kind of predict it, but it keeps you on your toes a little bit.
It does, and it's bound to keep the opposition on their toes as well. The urban culture is feeling a bit Marvin Gaye this morning. Let's get it on, he says. Well, absolutely, indeed. Tony, we spoke on Friday about your predicted 11. Has that changed any over the weekend?
No, but as Amy said, I have to predict an 11 every game, Amy, so it's, difficult.
I don't know why you bother, Tony.
Correct, I don't know why I bother, but I'm asked to do it, so I do it. So but yeah, it's been, I always call it an arduous task. It's not arduous, it's quite enjoyable actually, because you want to see if you're bang on the money. A few times I've been bang on the money, a couple of times I've been 7, 8, but on a good day you get 9 or 10, so I always settle that. But no, my team was same as Livingston, except I had one change. I had O'Reilly and Rogic.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's fair enough. What do you reckon about O'Reilly's musical taste, Amy? He's into a bit of the old ACDC and Aerosmith.
I was shocked. I was extremely shocked.
Are they not trendy enough, for somebody of his calibre?
I don't mind a bit of Aerosmith, a little bit, but I wouldn't have pinned them. No, I was very, very surprised. Very surprised. But fair play.
Fair play indeed. The urban culture is back in. It's a good day to be Celtic to win the cup. Odds will be way shorter in the morning. It's one of these games, I think, Tam Courts is, when you look at his performance over the season, he's done pretty well. And on one occasion at Celtic Park, one each, I know that we have spoken about that quite a bit. Tony, Celtic certainly didn't have it their own way that day. You weren't that impressed with Dundee United. We blew them away at Tannadice when Liam Scales scored an absolute belter. It's completely different in the cup though, isn't it? Monday night under the floodlights.
Listen, this isn't a gimme. If Celtic supporters are going up there thinking this is a gimme, it's not. It's arguably one of the hardest ties you could have got. You've just got to be professional and be clinical and do all the things you've been doing in the 29-game unbeaten run, and hopefully your quality will see you through the end. But it's a difficult game.
Yeah.
I've seen predictions of 3-0, 4-0, a bit like the last time. But they did the same in December. They went up to Tannadice in December in what was supposedly a difficult game, and they made very light work of it. But you have to say, when Dundee United have turned up this season, they're pretty good to watch. Tam Courts has got them playing pretty well. So this is a one-off cup. The shackles are off for Dundee United. Semi-final at hand and at stake. But you tend to trust the manager and you trust the quality players that Celtic have at their disposal. And if they do the right things and play the way they've been playing, then you find it hard to see past them, don't you? Take another step towards a possible domestic treble. But
Can we whisper it? Tony? A domestic treble?
Well, people are thinking about it now, aren't they? So you can't. It's what is it they say? It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? So embrace it, meet it head on. As I say, it's a night for being professional and clinical and all the things that and as Ange always says, a night for playing our football. And if Celtic play our football, well, you're pretty confident that they can go up there and win.
Tony's mentioned playing our football, and that is something that that's the kind of language Ange has been using, Amy. I want to talk throughout today's broadcast about the culture that has been implemented by Ange Postecoglou since he came in. We are heading towards 30 games unbeaten domestically, which is a far cry from 3 out of 6 being defeats at the beginning of the season, where there was a little bit of panic setting in among some of the ACSOM contributors, myself included. But before we start talking in depth about tonight's game and the potential for a domestic treble, not counting our chickens, there has been a story broken just in the last wee while, I think it was on The Athletic, that Ben Doak is edging closer to a move to Liverpool. 16 years of age, he was thrust into the first team by Ange Postecoglou. Did he bypass the B team, Amy? Was he playing for the B team? Was he in and about that?
So he's been in and about, but just very, very fleetingly, minuscule appearances. But he's not signed a professional contract with Celtic, so any kind of compensation, part of anything like that, it's going to be minimal. So he's really excited, I think, to work under Klopp. I think that's the real drive. But yeah, it was The Athletic. James Pearce broke it this morning as well, alongside Kieran Devlin. So it's just another one of those, it's like Morrison out to Bayern Munich. It's that same old story that Celtic just can't quite seem to hold on to the youngsters at that time, So obviously Ange has gave him a little bit of a chance, and you would think at that time that's because that was him wanting to bed him in to the first team setup kind of thing, but then you're just putting them on the market, and the rumours have been kicking around for a wee while. There's been a few clubs down south, Man City were looking as well, so I don't think it was ever going to be long, because the attraction is there. There's no denying it, but again, it kind of just continues on that precedent that again Celtic are just letting these young players slip through their fingers.
It's a frustration of mine. It really is. I mean, we've spoken about it over the last year, mainly, Tony, and you can maybe cast your mind back over the last 21 years in journalism, talking about Celtic talents. And by the way, I don't know how prevalent it is elsewhere. I know there's some kind of big names who have left other Scottish clubs. I get all that, but I focus on the Celtic setup. It seems to be happening with more regularity, Tony, than ever before. And we know that Islam Farouz, he was an early example, wasn't he? Chelsea come in, he goes down there, we get a compensation fee. But as Amy has mentioned, there's been a couple of players went over to Hepburn as well, gone over to Bayern Munich. We've lost players to Liverpool, Blackburn Rovers. We've lost Angelini, Davy Hayes' grandson, the highly rated goalkeeper. He went down to Watford, I think it was. And Ben Doak seems to be the next in a long line of young talents, Tony, that we simply cannot keep. And I was looking at the circumstances around him being thrown into the first team, wondering, is he being fast-tracked? Is Ange saying to him, listen, Ben, you can be part of the plans. I'm going to prove it to you. Here's a few games. One of the games was against Rangers. Yet we seem unable to keep the talent at Celtic Park, and it really is a point of frustration for me, Tony. Is it completely out of our hands? Is the bright lights of the English Premiership and elsewhere just too strong for these young guys?
It's a worrying trend, isn't it? That's the problem, and you think they would maybe want to stay at Celtic and learn their trade, but is it down to, is it money? You have to ask the question, is it, as you say, the bright lights and money and the glamour of playing elsewhere? Because these are big names you're talking about, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, teams like that, so it's hard for a youngster not to be swayed by that as well, but you would like to think that Celtic do the level best to try and keep them, but it's just happening too often that it is pretty alarming, isn't it? And then the next one, you're going to ask the question of Karamoko, isn't it? At the end of this season, and we've not seen enough of Karamoko in the first team at all, really, through injury, sadly as well. But come the end of the season, he's up for grabs, isn't he? Because it's the end of his contract.
Mm-hmm.
And Celtic have a big decision to make on Karamoko as well, and Karamoko's a big decision to make whether he commits to Celtic again. But Ben Doak's one that the glimpses you've seen of Ben Doak, you saw that he had pace to burn, energy, and ally to some ability. But what I always want to know is if Liverpool and Bayern Munich and these teams are seeing something in these guys, why are Celtic letting them go so early and so easily? And then again, because they are at Celtic Football Club, so surely they should stay and play, and then play those 100 games or whatever, and then make yourself a saleable asset. So what happens at 15, 16 that makes Liverpool, Bayern Munich a more enticing option than playing for Celtic's first team?
This is a big concern for me, because you opened up there, Tony, by saying about money. Obviously, it's a huge thing, because it's life-changing for any player at any age. But, when you're a teenager and you're offered that carrot, I mean, you've just got to look at Leo Held. He was a player that it looked as though Celtic were trying to work his development. He was getting the loan deals out, getting the first team football. John Hughes memorably referred to him as being like Van Dijk. And I was looking forward to him coming back and being part of the squad this season. He was part of the pre-season. It looked as though Ange was willing to give him some game time. Ocoflex was the other one, wasn't it? These guys have played now for Leeds and West Ham United's first team, respectively. And it looks as though it's an issue that's becoming more and more prevalent. Karamoka Dembele burst onto the scene as a 13-year-old playing for, I think it was the under 18s as a 13-year-old, makes his debut at 16, youngest player ever to play in Europe for Celtic at 16 years of age. But what I would say is, there's no guarantee that big move at that age, having not played much in the way first team football, is going to work out. I mean, it should be about your development. And I'm going to bring Kieran Tierney into this because he's in the news as well. There's a proposed move to Real Madrid, and we'll talk about that as well. But what Kieran Tierney did is he got those games under his belt that Tony's talking about, Amy, and it has shown that it's actually worked in terms of his development. He then goes to Arsenal as a first team player. What's it going to take for Ben Doak to become a Liverpool first team player? It's going to take a huge amount of effort, development and time as well before he's breaking in, I would guess, to the Liverpool first team. So what's your thoughts on it, Amy? It seems to me as though there's nothing actually that Celtic can do about this trend.
Yeah, it's odd, and again, I understand and like I say, I'm 21, so these guys are younger than me, and if you're getting offered the ridiculous money that they're getting offered, you are going to jump at that. So I do understand, and you want to say that you're a Liverpool player or a Bayern Munich player, of course, but my counter to that is as well, though, I always think of Aaron Hickey. So that wasn't even the bright lights of a massive, European club. Celtic lost him to Hearts, got first team appearances at Hearts. Now he's out ripping it up in Serie A, and the Italians absolutely love him, and he's getting touted to be named in Steve Clarke's Scotland squad tomorrow. And that's him still. He's only 18 or 19, something like that. He's born 2002. So, even the case of Aaron Hickey, and I understand at the time, obviously, Celtic had Kieran Tierney, but, just because you have one doesn't mean you can't. But so Hickey's always the one that I look at that not necessarily he would have broke it at Celtic, you never know, but, at 15, 16, Celtic let him go to Hearts. You don't just magically then become the player that can go at still being a teenager, going and ripping it up in Serie A. So there's something just that's allowing, or the fact that there's not a filter almost, there's not a gate that is then letting these players slip through Celtic's fingers, but it is all down to money, isn't it?
Well, the thing, Amy, what it does show is we can't sit here and say Celtic can't produce footballers. Well, of course they can. Otherwise, all these big clubs, Tony, wouldn't be interested in taking them down south or over to Germany. So Celtic are producing it, so that we're doing something right, but there just seems to be that bit. And I think money's a massive factor, of course it is. Do you think maybe in recent years there hasn't been the pathway to the first team? Is that something that Ange can work on? Well,
I think that's something that Ange said he was going to work on, which is why the B team train the same way as the first team, so that the transition isn't so difficult. No, I think Ange had a lot contend with when he came in the door. This is something moving forward he'll want to address. Ben Doak's been on Liverpool's radar since before Ange came in. Am I right in thinking that? I believe
There's been talk about it, for several months.
So,
absolutely.
I think if this is a kind of process that started before Ange came in and it's now coming to the fact that the boy might go to Liverpool, then I think you might find that might be the kind of last of the youngsters if Ange can reverse that trend in any shape or form. Because Ange will be very much of the opinion the only way to develop your game is to play football matches at the level that's required for you to then take your talent to the next stage. And also, Ben Doak's going to go to Liverpool and get swallowed by a system, isn't he? Yeah, he might be developed into a fine player, but when will that be? 2 or 3 years down the line? Don't know, maybe even longer. You just don't know, do you? And as you said there, there's no guarantee. You'll get the money, but there's no guarantee you'll kick a first-team ball for Liverpool. Whereas I think Ange would sort of try and sell it in the fact that, you're progressing really well here. You will kick a first-team ball for Celtic. But again, as Ange has always said himself, if you don't want to be part of it, there's the door. So I think there will come a time when he will have a nucleus of youngsters in the B team that want to be part of it, and he'll show them that pathway. And there will be natural progression. So maybe that at the moment's fractured a wee bit, that there isn't a natural pathway as yet. Not so good. I mean, the whole killing of reserve team football sort of killed that, didn't it? That whole pathway, the reserve team league and all that, when you played the corresponding fixture. Your first team and your second team played the corresponding. Once that was shattered, that blew it all apart, really. And there was no clear pathway. But I think Ange's quite big on. I mean, even from coming in and making the B team train the same way as the first team, that's a good initial step. And passing that down and saying, right, and then if you do promote a youngster, they come in and they don't feel lost, let's put it that way. And their game will be naturally brought on when you're playing with better players. And then there'll come a point where they won't be or look out of place in a first team setup. So I think that's what Andy's trying to nurture, but it's everything, isn't it? He's spinning plates. He's trying to win a title, he's trying to win a domestic treble. He's trying to get a first team that can, as you say, towards a domestic dominance culture as well. And he's taking it bit by bit, isn't he? He said himself that the whole phrase that he used, building his beautiful house, but somewhere along the line, the B team will feature in that, won't he? And he will want, that'll be uppermost in his mind, reversing this trend of seeing good quality young players heading for the likes of Bayern Munich and Liverpool.
Yeah, the thing that you say there, Tony, is it's been a long time coming. Amy, the reserve league, it's been years since we've had it, and Ange just walked into it during a process where it's taken us to a point where in the past a group of Celtic youngsters, maybe on the ground staff as it was called at some point, their dream was to kick a ball for Celtic. Now it seems as though that dream is to get a big move somewhere else. At the same time, I can look at a lot of the youngsters over the last 10, 15 years who have proved very promising in their teenage years. By the time they're 21 or 22 and their contract's been run down at Celtic and they end up dropping down 3 or 4 leagues, the amount of players that's happened to has been, it's been huge. The highest percentage of young talents have not made the grade at Celtic. So I can understand why young guys, 16, 17, 18, are saying, well, I'm going to take my move now. It's a short career. This might be my only opportunity. 4 years later, I could be playing kind of lower league football in Scotland. I'm going to chance my mitt. I'm going to try my luck elsewhere. I totally get that. We're talking about a culture. Dermot, Celtic, Rabbitoh. Another step towards a domestic clean sweeps. Go for the boys. The reason I'm bringing this up is on the other side of the scale. James Robertson's asking, why start a dominance chat? No need for it. The reason I would talk about it is because it is about embedding a culture of success, a culture of meeting certain standards. And Ange Postecoglou has been all about setting his own culture at Celtic Football Club since he came in 9 or 10 months ago. And I think it's as relevant now as ever, as our ex-manager Neil Lennon took up a position at Ammonia last week after a year or over a year out of the game, and he described his final season at Celtic as toxic. But surely, Amy, the culture of a football club, right, is implemented by the gaffer. And I think that when you look at Ange Postecoglou and what he has done since he's came in, he proves that you can actually flip the culture on its head, because what we have now, and we're going to be talking about some of this, is we've got a team who don't even want a rest when they're given a rest with no midweek fixtures. You've got a team who want to continue to work towards the next hurdle, which is Dundee United tonight. What's your thoughts on the comments and on the culture that's been implemented by Ange Postecoglou of we don't stop?
Yeah, it's very much, and you can see that the players are buying into that, and we've said that for quite a while now. And at the end of the day, that's all that really does matter. Obviously, getting the fans on side, paramount. But if the players aren't buying into it, then something will need to change. And obviously, last year nothing did change. But the players do seem to be, wanting to put their bodies on the line for Postecoglou, and I think it's the respect each way. We've heard him talk so many times that he's not one for always, talking or going into the change room a lot, because that's the players' space. So I think all these little things that he's just given, Cal McGregor his place or given Joe Hart his place, just given the respect each way. I think that's got a massive part to play, in all honesty.
You remember talking about a culture, the culture of success, Tony. I mean, is there anything wrong about looking towards a domestic kind of treble, the dominance that Celtic not had become accustomed to, but had built themselves up to in recent years? I think it comes down to a culture of success. I don't think it's, getting ahead of yourself. And, when Ange is going into games, for example, like the Europa Conference League games, and it now seems pretty clear that certainly in the second leg, he was quite happy to forsake that for the league. I don't think he would be looking at a domestic Scottish Cup in the same way. Surely he wants it all.
Well, he said he wants it all. He said he wants to be there at the business end of the season when everything's handed out, and he wants Celtic to be there lifting everything at the business end of the season. So he's ambitious, and you just say it's what's wrong with trying to breed a culture of success. And he's come in and he's tried to do that early doors with the Celtic team, and maybe surprised himself that they won the League Cup in December, because he probably didn't factor that in. Probably thought that was too soon in the rebuilding process. But they became winners very early on, and they're now in the midst of an unbeaten 29-game domestic run, going for 30 tonight. Who's to say that they won't? So potentially they've got 11 games left. Who's to say that run won't go to 41? And what's the problem with that? Why are people don't getting ahead of yourself? That's the reality that you're facing. And if you do that, you'll win the title, you'll win the treble. So, as I say before, you embrace that. Ange will be telling his players to embrace that. There is nothing to fear from this. You embrace it and you go for it, as they say. And I think Ange's, in a short space of time, it's been amazing that he has instilled that culture in the players. We don't stop. Joe Hart's comment the other day were quite significant, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you looked at it and you thought these guys were offered days off or holidays and they knocked it back. Don't know about you, but as a Celtic supporter, I think that's magic. That's really good. There's easy things to take days off, isn't it? And to take your time away and clear your head. And I get all that, and I wouldn't have batted an eyelid if the players did take time off to decompress. But he's got them all up. No want them. We're focused on the job at hand here. And, we talk about getting ahead. Celtic are going to have to go to Ibrox and win. Get your head around that. If they want to win the title, people saying, I'll take a draw right now. And I don't mind taking a draw. Get your head around the fact that if you go and win, you can, you put yourself firmly in the driving seat. And I think that's the kind of things that the managers instilling in the players. And people say, one game at a time. Yeah, it's one game at a time to the outside world. He's thinking of all sorts of things, because that's the kind of guy he is, and that's a good thing. He's thinking about the team he's going to play at Ibrox. He's thinking about players and
who's potentially coming back for certain games as well, Tony.
Who's going to rotate, all that stuff, because as he keeps telling himself, we're at the business end of the season, and good teams feature prominently in the business end of the season, and he wants Celtic to be a good team. So if he wants Celtic to be a good team, that means being successful. I like that. I'm on board with that. You know what I mean? So, and so talking about cultures of domestic dominance, you're not getting ahead of yourself. That's what the manager has told you he wants to do. And not just domestically, he actually wants to be a force in Europe too. But again, that's something that he'll work on depending on what European tournament Celtic qualify for the league position this season.
Yep, it came a wee bit too early, I think, in the Ange Postecoglou process. Amy Pat Byrnes comes in. Seems like ages since we last seen the Celtic. Yeah, it does actually. Brian Walsh picks up on that as well. I'm slightly concerned that tonight's game has almost crept up on us. We haven't played for a while. Hope it doesn't affect the performance. But that does lead us on to the Joe Hart comments, Amy, whereby he has basically said that they're loving their work so much they didn't want to take a rest. When that's coming from someone with that level of experience, the England international experience that he has, by the way, the European experience that he has over the piece as well, that must be rubbing off on a lot of the younger players as well, and it actually feeds into this culture that we're talking about as well, Amy.
Yeah, it's the drive's there then, isn't it? And that's what you want. I don't think it's going back to that comment though. I don't think it will have crept up. I think, it would take us back 8 days ago and we were like, this is pretty decent that we've got a bit of a break just to recharge the batteries. I know at the other end then, but I think it could prove pivotal, or certainly hope it will. I've never really thought of it in a negative kind of sense, because I just felt, Celtic went through what was it? It was something crazy, like 8 games or was it 11 games in 5 weeks, something mental. So I think it can only be, a recharge of the batteries. You're listening to Ange Postecoglou having more time on the training ground, just getting to implement the style and little training techniques that they've maybe not been able to do because it has been so much, just game, recuperate, prepare, and there's not been a sustainable period really to try and implement anything else. So I think it is absolutely, going to be a positive thing that the recharge of the batteries will have been there, but it can only be a great thing to hear that from Hart, that they actually didn't want to stop. I think many of their bodies will definitely have been thankful for it, but the fact that they just want to play, then that means as well that there's demands, or you'd like to think that then players are competing for their position. Nobody's just walking into the side, and with the strength and depth that we've kind of been talking about, trying to get at least 2 per position, then it's all about fighting for your spot. So the fact that they want to keep playing, it can only be, as you say, that culture that we don't stop.
We don't stop. 1967 doesn't like this chat about dominance. Just fueling the fire for determination for Rangers. All this chat comes back to embarrass you. Does it? Does it really? Is it not about having a culture of success? Is it not about aiming to win every single game and every single trophy that's at your disposal? Brian Walsh, I want to see us going full strength tonight. It is not a night for rotation. This is what I mean. What is full strength? A natural left-footed player at left back, please. This is the thing. We will be talking about who starts tonight, Brian, and sometimes it can be difficult, especially if you're looking upon it on a game-to-game basis. Does any of the players that came in, in our last encounter against Livingston, deserve to be dropped? That's a big question. Jamesy Forrest, does he deserve to be dropped? Tommy Rogic, I know that Tony's replacing him tonight with Matt O'Reilly. What about Nir Beaton? Does he deserve to be dropped? It's a difficult one, but we will be talking about it. I want to talk about Kieran Tierney. KT, we loved a bit of KT, didn't we? And he showed what can happen when you come into a Celtic side and you develop as a Celtic player. You look at that shot of him coming on for the first time as a sub. Looks like a skinny wee laddie. And then by the time he leaves, he's an absolute machine. And he goes to the English Premiership. He stars for Arsenal, and there's now talk about him going to Real Madrid for 50 million quid. Now, I think in terms of an example, Tony, surely Kieran Tierney's that example. You can develop, you can get there with, by staying at Celtic, you can still get there. You can still get to Arsenal, you can still get to Real Madrid.
Yeah, but I mean, Kieran Tierney's story is just, it's remarkable that John Collins asked him to make up the numbers, and then him and Ronnie Dyler watched him and thought,
he's not bad.
Simon. And I got that story from John Collins first hand. So I just said to him, what did you think? He went, honestly, just couldn't believe it. Ronnie Dylan and I just turned to each other and looked, where's this guy been hiding? Or, they kind of knew of him but didn't realise how good he was. But he said that the thing about it was Tierney embraced it. Tierney wasn't a guy who was picked to make up the numbers. Tierney went in and thought, right, I'll show them how good I am. I'm a first team player in the making. And they forced Ronnie Dyler and John Collins' hand to say, okay, we'll let you train with the first team more and more. And through that, again, you develop, you become a good player playing up alongside better players. And Kieran Tierney went on his path and his journey, and became, as you say, the young boy who became the kind of machine. And good luck to him. But he showed once he was there that he belonged there, didn't he? Worked on his game as well, and became a class player for Celtic, but played the amount of games needed to make yourself a saleable asset. And then when Arsenal came calling, it's, much to a lot of the Celtic supporters' dismay and some anger as well, what people still haven't forgiven Kieran Tierney, but you can only just say thank you for everything that you did. Go and take your career to the level that you want it to go, because you can't stop them, can you? You can maybe stop them at 16, and I think that's what Ange will want to address in the future. But when they get to Kieran Tierney's age and have played that amount of games for Celtic and have been very successful, you can't stop it then. But we want that part. We want that middle part, don't we? Play over 100, 200 for Celtic, and then go with our blessing. And I think most Celtic supporters will admit now that Kieran Tierney was just built for bigger and better things. It pains you to say it, but he's proved it, hasn't he? And
generational talent, absolutely.
Yeah, as much as we like to think that Celtic are the greatest team in the world, and they are in your heart and your mind, if you're a romantic, the reality is that Arsenal's and Real Madrid's of this world, we're trying to compete with them, but we know deep down that it's a hard ask, isn't it?
It is, and I remember back in the day, reading the programme notes one day in the 90s, and Pat McGinley was asked, Pat McGinley being the ex-Celtic and Hibs midfielder, he was asked who that he wanted to play for when he was a kid, and he said AC Milan, and that perturbed me. I was like, well, no son, Celtic, that's who you want to play for, because I remember the shooting the match interviews with the likes of Tommy Burns and Peter Grant, favourite second team Celtic reserves, and I loved that attitude. But I understand as time has moved on in the modern game that if you are this generational talent as KT was, that you want to challenge yourself. Did it come too soon for him? Well, he's proved that it hasn't. We felt as Celtic fans that it had, because we wanted him to stay at Celtic, clearly. Amy, when he left, did you expect him to be making this level of progress?
I think we did. I certainly felt, or certainly hoped, that he would, but I think we did. And I think that's as well probably because there was a little bit of disappointment at the time, certainly for me, that I was like, why Arsenal? I just don't think Arsenal aren't the best down south by quite a long stretch. They've been on decline for a number of years now as well. So I think there was a lot of disappointment, because I did think even then that he could have went to a higher level, but he's maybe done it the right way around. He's went in and totally and utterly, the Arsenal fans have took him to, like how we really did, to be honest. They're also very good at actually, and if you follow any kind of like Arsenal content, they do very much still play it up to the boy with the H, and they make sure that his Celtic links are still kind of always there. But I think he was always going to be destined for bigger things, because he is better than Arsenal. He walked in, had a tricky time with injuries, but like I say, right now, you watch him with the captain's armband, and there's a good reason for that as well, because he is by far the greatest leader that they have on that park, and that's with multi-millionaire or £1 million players, sorry. But again, I think it was, but as you rightly touched upon, he is a generational talent.
Yeah, it was funny to see that wee clip of him squaring up to the opposition player whilst hiding behind the linesman the other day. I thought that was great. Wee bit of Gallus. And then he's modelling the Adidas Barrowland trainers as well. Do you think we'll see him back in the hoops again at some point, maybe in the kind of twilight of his career?
Yeah, because he's openly said that.
I could see that, Tony.
His career at Celtic. So, and I think he might even cut short wherever his final destination is, to come back to Celtic and not insult people's intelligence and just wind down the clock. I think he'll want to give Celtic 2 or 3 years of good service, decent service, because he might think himself that he left too early, but it was a financial decision that suited everybody. So I think he'd like to come back and not just, the last 18 months and wind it all down and play bit parts. I think if you're Kieran Tierney, he wants to come back and, and contribute, which would be great. I just think it's in his mind, because he's been pretty straight down the line about these kind of things. He loves the club. He loves the club with a passion. But he just his whole career just went stratospheric, didn't it? Very early. But that's because he worked on his own game too. And are you surprised to see him being linked with a move to Real Madrid? No, not in the slightest. I remember saying I used to do the English kind of National Football Museum. They would have like Zoom calls and stuff, and there was a few Arsenal fans there, and they asked me about Tierney, and I just said to them, one word, diamond. And then Amy said he had a couple of injuries at first, and I was getting, what happened to the diamond? I just kept saying diamond. And then a few months down the line, they were like, diamond. And I'm like, told you. So you asked my opinion, and this guy was a diamond of a footballer, and he will prove it. I said to him, and he will leave you broken-hearted too. It's something along the line.
The day will come.
I said, enjoy him while you can. And they were like, no, they're the same. He'll not get bigger than Arsenal. And sadly, he will get bigger than Arsenal. Believe me, he will. And you're not, and it's not being wise after any event. You saw it for yourself.
Yeah.
This is, you say, once in a generational talent. You looked at that and you thought, well, this boy's got what it takes to go to the top. Because he had the right attitude too, on and off the park. Quite a humble guy. And remember there was that kind of story where he took his books in a plastic bag and all that, which made headline things, a Tesco bag or something, that kind of not forgetting your roots in it. No Louis Vuitton for the ball, Kieran Tierney, a Tesco bag, that'll do. And I think that's brilliant. Keeps you grounded, that kind of thing, and those kind of touches. And I wish him nothing but the best, because he comes across as a genuine guy who loved the football club, and it was just natural progression that took him away from Celtic. But I think he will come back, and he'll want to play a prominent part, not as a kind of pension topping up exercise, if you get what I mean.
No, I think we will see it. We've had players like Henrik Larsson and Van Dijk who have gone on to win the European Cup or the Champions League. I wouldn't bet against Tierney being one of those players as well. Would I have him back? And in an absolute heartbeat. Sean McAteer, evening from Hong Kong. Thanks for tuning in, Sean. Love the show. Great midfield three for tonight's show. At some point, would it be possible to go over the Puskestein Big Ange connection, please? Because we mention it from time to time, Tony, when you and I are on the show.
Well, tell Sean to send me his email address, and I wrote an article about it, and I'll ping him the article, because it kind of, if he wants to read it, that is. Brilliant.
Yep. Tony delves into that, Sean. So give us your email and we will get that sent on to you as well. Jake Ryan, great to be top of the league, but Rangers are on their way to the quarterfinals of the Europa League, something we haven't done in decades. European failures need to be addressed next season. I'd agree with that. I think Tony called it right when he says that it was maybe just a bridge too far this season, but I'm pretty sure Ange Postecoglou will be looking towards next season and making better progress in Europe. A couple of players who got quite a bit of European experience under their belts this season so far, Amy, have been Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers. And I found it interesting when Ange Postecoglou was talking about the future of the pair, and he didn't go in saying, we're going to sign these guys, etc. What will be. Slightly concerning. Do you think if we don't sign them that, it might actually show a measure of our ambition moving into a potential Champions League campaign next year?
I honestly don't even want to imagine not signing them, because I think I've just led myself to believe that they are Celtic players. But I think it would be a really poor sign actually if Celtic don't, because especially Jota. No, I was going to say especially Jota, but you need Cameron Carter-Vickers at the back. I think equally, it would just be catastrophic, because I think most Celtic fans have now certainly. I've certainly not met anyone that's not bought into the ideas of buying them both. I think they're so crucial to everything that's went on at the start of this season, and throughout. And yeah, there's been so much talk around it. Then there was, as always in January, you would every few days you would get Jota's close, Carter-Vickers is close, Jota's close, and then obviously January's came and gone, and still neither have signed. So I think it'd be really, really tough if they never. And I think it's just really poor for them, because they're both guys who, have had a lot of loan moves already in their career. Carter-Vickers in particular, played everywhere. And this is the first time that they've both racked up 30 plus games and constantly. Carter-Vickers is your number one starting centre half. And he's built up a real partnership, or triangle actually, with Joe Hart as well at the back, but obviously a partnership with Starfelt. And then Jota, everyone's just, I don't know, a Celtic fan that doesn't love him. So they're at a place where they certainly seem to be happy as well. They're playing a style of football that suits the both of them. Carter-Vickers is so comfortable with the ball at his feet, happy to stride forward as well, doesn't do it as much as I'd actually like. But then Jota, he's so happy on either flank as well. And Ange Postecoglou allows him that you see when he's perhaps a little bit frustrated, he'll swap flanks just to take on that defender instead. So he's getting a lot of freedom, and I don't think that's something that he's obviously got anywhere else, hence why he's not had such a successful run that he's having. And they do both look he's happy. And obviously the key reason, he's bought IKEA furniture, so you don't do that if you're leaving in the summer.
Tony, Ange is brutally honest. He really is. You've spoken to him quite a number of times now. And I think that was interesting where he was pretty non-committal. It was all about, as long as they do what they can for us whilst they're here, the future will take care of itself. But I'm a wee bit like Amy in that I see the planning for next season. For example, if we go into the summer and we were to sign a pair of those players, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that it would be a big outlay in terms of transfer fees and wages, then you'd be looking at your budget. If we went and bought another 3 guys in on loan, as we do have at the moment, Maeda's obviously on loan, and Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers, and we went into the new campaign with the squad we already have, those 2 guys permanent and a few other loanees, then I would be thinking we're in a much stronger position than we were last year. If we don't get them in, left-hand side of our attack is a big issue then, because we don't have that backup that we do have on the right-hand side, that we do have through the centre, that we do have in the mid. We just don't have it. And the central defensive area is a big concern, because we don't have that standard if you remove Cameron Carter-Vickers.
But these are 2 of the plates that Ange is spinning in his head, isn't it? And I think just now, nothing will detract the team from trying to achieve, first and foremost, winning the title. Now, nobody knows if Carter-Vickers and Jota are any closer to signing at the end of the season than they were signing in January, or signing a permanent deal when they walked in the door, right? It's all speculation, it's all hearsay. I think the situation remains the same. So there was never any panic. It was always a season-long loan with the option to buy at the end of the season with a price in place, and on the proviso that the players were happy, it suited every party, a deal will be concluded. That's not changed. So people talk about inching closer, yada yada. It's, until they sign on the dotted line or they walk away from the building, that's it. But I think Ange's, he doesn't need that now, right? You've 8 games to go. You win 6, you'll be crowned champions. I think that's uppermost in the team's mind. Not about contracts, not about who stays, who goes, because that'll all come out in the wash in the summer. But I think they'll certainly put themselves in pole position to get those deals over the line if they win the title and they go straight into the Champions League. Mm-hmm. So one drives the other, kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think the manager's totally aware of that, and he's also totally aware of life without them too. And he'll be right now looking at players, because you know what he's like. He told us he looks at players that will fit his system, not just if he's a good player, So he'll have in his head ready-made replacements or guys that can come in and do a similar job. Yeah, we don't want to contemplate that. We might have to contemplate that, but conversely, they might sign after winning the title, and that feel-good factor can last right through the summer. Is it vital we get them? Yeah, for the way you see the team developing, you think it's vital. Is the outlay's not particularly high? Because I think if you're going to get two players of similar quality, you're going to pay a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And who they are, I wouldn't know at this precise moment in time, because I've not really scanned around and trying to think myself about who would come in to replace them. But they've made a vital contribution to this team. And I think the manager, he's totally aware of that, and totally aware of where Celtic go after that. Life with them, life without them. But I agree with Amy, the thought of losing them just fills you with a bit of dread, doesn't it, really? And you wince and you do think, oh, please get it over the line, let them stay, I hope they're happy. And they appear to be happy, don't they?
They do. And I think the Champions League's massive. I think.
And I just think talk of contracts at this stage in the season, the same way I said with Brown coming back, bin it. You've got nothing else matters. Tonight you've got a leg of a potential treble. Yeah, you have to address it because Celtic are still the only team that can win a treble. And if they win tonight, you take a step closer to that. Yeah, fine. But the be-all and end-all from the start of the season in July, August was try to win this title back. Nothing detracts from that. Everything else is a sideshow which you don't need, don't want. Even so, talk of these guys signing, bin it. It doesn't enter your head. As Joe Hart said, we don't stop. Just be relentless as you can, chalking up wins, chalking up points, chalking up cup wins. Yeah, let's do this. They've got a potential 11 to go. Just focus on what's ahead. And the first focus is Dundee United. Wider picture, of course, there's domestic dominance and a treble there. Yet we get that. But just focus on the job at hand.
Tony has mentioned the Scott Brown comments from last week, Amy, which I've got to say I completely agree with him. I wouldn't be making any kind of changes at all between now and the end of the season in that respect. I wouldn't be bringing anybody in. Do you agree with that? I know that for the first time in his adult life, Scott Brown is currently unemployed, looking for other opportunities. And some Celtic fans, it led a discussion on ACSOM one of the days to say, should he come back to Celtic? I'm of the view, I've got to say, I agree with Tony. You don't make any changes like that at this stage of this season.
No, I don't think so. In the summer, fine, fair enough. And again, it gives Postecoglou a chance then to, see what could Scott Brown bring to coaching staff. Because I know, and rightly so, he said, that there's always going to be a door open for him. But it can't just be purely for sentimental reasons that Scott Brown's brought back. You want him to be able to offer something in a coaching capacity as well. And he would want that. He wouldn't just want to be let in just because of who he is or whatnot. You want to be very much the best man for the job. But at this stage in the season, no. You keep going, and I think it's almost as well. You've got to give respect to the guys that have got there with Ange Postecoglou and the team thus far as well. But as Tony's saying, Ange's got so many plates to be spinning right now. You don't need that other one, of trying to bring in Scott Brown. I know that sounds silly because he should just be able to, bed himself right back in. But it's a totally different culture than what it was to the culture that he left behind. So, no, not at this stage. I don't think I also just don't think there's a need. Celtic are thriving right now. So you just, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it.
I like it. Yeah, there is no toxic culture at Celtic anymore. Let's talk football. Come on. Dundee United going to ruin the history books and get their first Scottish Cup win over Celtic in 41 years. Come on, back it up. How are they going to do that? Let us hear your thoughts. Let's talk football. We'll bring them up. Jonathan Brown comes in. He's talking about Giakoumakis starting up front tonight. Let's have a chat about that then. Let's have a look at some of the dilemmas or some of the choices that will be made this evening by Ange Postecoglou. And one of the big questions, I guess, is Maeda, who he's been talking about, Tony, during the week. He's been talking about what he brings to the club. And, of course, he is a player that he knows a lot about. Giakoumakis, He came in, tricky start, won over a lot of fans. Then he was out with a wee bit of illness. He seems to be back in the firing in line. He is up for selection tonight. Who do you pick? I think when I asked you last week, Tony, you were still going to stick with Maeda.
Yeah, I was sticking with Maeda because his confidence levels would be up from the Livingston game. Giakoumakis didn't get the chance to play back-to-back games after his Dundee hat-trick when his confidence level was sky high, because he told you in his comments afterwards, didn't he? And he got ill, so I'm a kind of yellow jersey, Tour de France kind of guy, if you've got it and you've done nothing wrong. But again, I've not got a qualm about who plays. I just think he'll maybe play Maeda because I think everybody expected Giakoumakis to come in last week against Livingston, and again he threw the curveball by playing Maeda, and Maeda justified his selection because he had arguably his best game in a Celtic jersey at a venue that was really difficult. And he got Celtic off to that flying start with the opening goal, which relaxed everybody, and Celtic played our football, as Ange brands it, and they won very comfortably. Mm-hmm. So, as I say, I'm not fussed who he plays up front, but I just think the honours will go to Maeda because he likes Maeda. He's always telling you what Maeda brings, and I think the Celtic supporters, it's maybe been a slow burner with Maeda, but you can see what he brings. He's a quality footballer. And I think once he really settles down, he will score a lot of goals. And the same with Giakoumakis. Giakoumakis is now showing signs of settling down. So it really is a coin flip for who plays up front tonight. And I'm really not fussed who does. People have their preferences. I've said Ange will go with Maeda, so there's every chance Ange will play Giakoumakis, isn't there? So, and I give it what do I know type thing, But I trust the manager implicitly. I made a point of saying last Monday we were on this show that he called that team spot on against Livingston.
Yes.
None of the three of us, any of the fans that went and occupied those three stands, and many other Celtic supporters, would never have played that team. But he got it spot on, even with Forrest, things like that. So there was a major hat tip to him last week in terms of his selection and his tactics and the way they embraced that game and they played it. And that's your template for the next 11. That's it. See, if you needed a pick-me-up, because people were saying their levels had slackened off, I'd even asked them if there was a lack of spark and I get my head bitten off for it. Fine, that's good. Yeah, exactly, that's working. Brilliant, love it. Yeah. But, there was no lack of spark at Livingston, was there?
No.
And you think to the next 11, if there's no lack of spark, then it will be successful.
I think it is a flip of a coin, Amy. I like Maeda. I like what I've seen. Owen McGrandle's the lad Maeda never hides or gives up. Maeda for me, I would agree with that. Will McMillan also comes in to say Maeda is in form and will play. Like Tony says, you've got the jersey, you keep it until such times as you fall out of favour or you're injured or you're ill. I think what we've got is we certainly do have, from what I've seen, two players who are pretty much on a level. Kyogo's on a different level. And obviously we've been missing him since December. But it could well be that it's a double-pronged kind of approach whereby whoever starts, he's going to give you 60 minutes of closing down the opposition, tracking back and winning free kicks because both players can do that. And then once you've kind of tired them out, you might have scored a goal or forced an OG or got a penalty as Maeda did against Livingston, and at 60 minutes you've got another fresh pair of legs on the bench. I think it's a particularly good position to be in, albeit I don't think either of the two of them are anywhere near the level of the first choice striker in Kyogo.
No, I don't think they are, but again, it's total toss of the coin tonight. I honestly wouldn't mind whoever it is. I do think I would go Maeda, or I think Ange will, again, purely on the same basis as you, that played really well against Livingston, so you've got to think that confidence is going to be high, that he's wanting to run out. And again, it's that, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And in the same kind of breath, then I would start James Forrest. Just because, again, I think, he got a lot of plaudits last week, obviously got his little trophy really awkwardly, and I would just go with that as well. So very much on the same basis that if it's, if you've got the jersey and you've not done anything to lose it, then I think you keep it. And saying that, though, obviously you said at the top, who's the curveball? I think the curveball will be Liam Scales.
Oh, left back.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about fullbacks. That's an interesting one because he did play particularly well at Tannadice earlier in the season. Michael Quinn is delighted for Kieran Tierney. He'll be back though. That'll be an interesting one. I imagine the video when he signs Twitter will go into meltdown. John Miller, disagree with the Brown comments. It's not sentimental. He is the ultimate winner. I also think at some point in the future we will see Scott Brown back at Celtic. I just don't think you want to rock the boat, as Bob Marley said. Now, let's talk about the full-back, seeing as you brought it up with that wee curveball, Amy Canavan. Left-back, Liam Scales. The big question is, I guess, who do we play right and left? Because I thought Tony Ralston did his usual against Livy, performed pretty well. Tony, left back, there's still some Celtic fans got question marks around Greg Taylor. Some, even myself, I've suggested Juranovic is a better left back than Taylor. Who do we start in the full back positions because they are so important to the whole shape of Ange's team?
Well, my team starts with the same full backs that played against Livingston because they did nothing wrong. And I've said before, the problem with Tony Ralston is every time he comes into the team, having been out, it gives you a reason not to put him out again, doesn't it? So he was terrific against Livingston, and Greg Taylor as well, who had been a bit of a whipping boy. He's been pretty solid recently too. Jim Moore always says, "Can we get better at left back than Greg Taylor?" Yeah, we probably can, but the guy has to be cut some slack because he's not allowed any mistakes. Whereas the likes of Ralston and Carter Vickers and Starfelt can maybe have the odd wobble when people say, they're still solid. Greg Taylor does anything wrong, it's hopeless, no good enough, no Celtic class and all this. He gets a lot of criticism for that, but I've noticed that in the last few games that Greg Taylor's engine's been good, getting up down, and his passing's been pretty smart, on the money, most times. So I think people are looking for instances to give it to Greg Taylor with both barrels. But on the premise that I think that team that played against Livingston and played very well, and they should start again. I think, and I've no any insight as to what Ange's team is, but I just think he'll go with Ralston and Taylor again on that premise. Because again, I used the kind of yellow jersey analogy because they played really, really well. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want from a Celtic team who's homing in in the business end of the season. That's what you wanted. So, whilst I think he'll rotate certain players in the 8 games stroke 11 if they get through the cup games to come, I don't think you'll see too much. It'll be 1 or 2 tops in this run that's coming up.
Tony's going for Taylor. Amy's going for Scales. Interesting. The Urban Culture's got a fight on his hand if he wants to adopt Tony Ralston. Amy Canavan called for Ralston to play ahead of John Joe Kenny all last season. The other one, of course, is that Tony would drop Tommy Rogic tonight for Matt O'Reilly. What's your thoughts on that? Because I think against Hibs, it was almost a flip because O'Reilly comes on, best player on the park, and then against Livingston, Tommy Rogic was one of the best players on the park. It's a great dilemma to have, but who do you opt for, Amy?
Rogic, purely because Tony's not. And it means one of us has hopefully got to be right. No, I would go Rogic. Again, I felt it was one of his best performances in a wee while. Again, most definitely since Motherwell. And I just think sometimes the rough and tough suits Rogic a little bit. He doesn't mind getting, in and around a little bit. I'm not saying that it really doesn't, because he certainly does, but I think he'll go with Rogic tonight.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm picking Rogic simply on the musical taste of Matt O'Reilly, which I think were shocking.
I'd bench him.
Again, I'm not too fussed because you've got 2 players of equal ability, haven't you?
Yep.
And I just thought the wee cameo that O'Reilly had when he came on against Livingston was really, really good. Because he was quite... he drove them forward and he played a couple of 2 balls, and I just thought that he might have played himself into contention for cup tie. Because again, going back to the rotation thing, logic will be needed for games where, further down the line, league games and stuff where you might have to break down stubborn defences. Mm-hmm. And I think just rotating certain positions, Logic and O'Reilly's position being one of them. But you've got 2 players who are vying for that jersey who are, who's the best player out of those 2? You couldn't really say, could you? that's a whole show in itself to debate the living daylights out of that. But what you are happy with is you've got like for like, you've got squad depth in that position alone, and that's a great thing for the last 8 games, net 11, if you get through the quarter-final and semi-final.
Absolutely. Patrick Dolan, chaos under the lights tonight, apparently, reminiscent of the 1980s. Tony and I will be under the studio lights because we will be covering the game. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction because I'll be chatting to you later on tonight, Tony, and I'm sure we'll get in about all of that. You feeling confident tonight, Amy?
I am. I am. A bit of buzz kicking around. And yeah, just like say, obviously not seen Celtic in a wee while. Obviously, as I said at the top of the show, had a great weekend with Bonnyrigg Rose. And on that note, I have to. There's not many Celtic fans in Bonnyrigg. There's not many Celtic fans through where I live. But at Bonnyrigg, massive Celtic family. The Kirkwoods are chairman. They're amazing. The Kirkwoods are long history with Celtic. And the littlest one, wee Harry's getting his tonsils taken out, so we missed our celebrations on Saturday. So I promised I'd give a wee shout out to him. So I hope your operation goes okay, wee man. Brilliant,
superb, mate. It's all happening in Bonnyrigg.
All you can say to that, Paul John, is love grows where my Bonnyrigg rose.
Oh, I love it. Well done. Yeah, cue an outro track. Yeah, it's all happening in Bonnyrigg, Amy, actually, because you've got Brooke Combe as well, who's absolutely smashing it.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Fair play to everyone from Bonnyrigg. Pat, oh, by the way, Starfelt hat-trick, 1,500-1. I keep saying this, Starfelt's the only outfield player that's not scored a goal for Celtic. Will tonight be the night? Because I bet you get long odds on him opening the scoring for Celtic. Tony and I, half an hour before kick-off.
Is that up there with Ayer towering header?
Towering header by Ayer, still waiting on it. Yeah, absolutely. Starfelt to open the score tonight. You heard it here first. Tony and I will be covering the game half an hour before it kicks off. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the chat. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, get yourself subscribing. Click on the link underneath this video to visit Who Knows Wins for a special Celtic group where you can go in and you predict, I think it's half a dozen outcomes, and there's a wee pot developing nicely on that as well. You'll notice some of the ACSOM team are involved. And thank you once again, Amy Canavan and Tony Haggerty, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.